We are afternoon now. Thank you very much. Lovely to see you all. Having listened to the previous talk, there might be a little bit of repetition in terms of sustainability, but I'm not going to apologise for that because I think you have to say it, and say it again. I'll just introduce myself and then ask Jo to introduce herself and tell you a little bit about her. My name is Anna Berry and I am one quarter of Retail 100 Consulting. We are called Retail 100 because we were founded on 100 years of retail experience between the four of us. I myself did 33 years at John Lewis, so did 22 jobs in that time, so I won't tell you what I did in all of those, but it's a very big company, so I've sourced across very many categories. And the thing about the John Lewis partnership is it is a company that has a very, very high ethical presence and belief, and it was about the greatest good for the greatest number of people who worked in it. It was a Benthamite socialist company, so it was all about doing business for good, which is something that really appealed to me. Now, clearly, when you're a buyer or a head of buying for John Lewis, you kind of buy a lot of stuff, which is counter to the topic that we're going to talk about today. But one of the key things we would talk about at John Lewis was the importance of buying quality. So the mantra that if you buy well, buy once. So it wasn't about driving fast fashion, and the critical problem with fast fashion that we have now is the overproduction of it, which we're going to talk about today, because you produce so much volume. And I was at a Vogue talk, which seems an odd place to go for a conversation about sustainability, but they were very clear that up to 40% of what is produced out of the factories in China and India actually never hits the shop floor. And that is the big problem with this overconsumption. So companies are trying to deliver amazing prices by going for MOQs, minimum order quantities, that are driving these mills and keeping them busy. But actually a huge percentage of what is produced never actually physically hits the shop floor. So the government is looking at this, and there needs to be more government regulation across this whole category. And as with electrical goods, where you now get charged for getting rid of those electrical goods, fridges, etc., through the litigation and legislation, this is coming in fashion. So what will happen is that those factories and suppliers who overproduce these quantities that are never going to hit the shop floor will be charged for that overproduction. So the intention is not to say that it's always bad to shop. We're not here to preach, but to say let's do it in the most responsible way. And there is no purpose in overproducing. Produce what is required. So that's where we're going to start from. So I'm going to introduce Jo, who's going to talk about where her business came from and her purpose, and then I'll talk to you a little bit about another business that we're working with in this sustainability circular area. So over to you, Jo.
Thanks, Anna. Hi, guys. My name's Jo Spolton, and I'm the founder of Rumage. Rumage is an aggregation app. It collects all of the second-hand and pre-loved and refurbished websites into one place. So if you were after a second-hand refurbished mobile phone for your child to go to school with, God forbid you ever wanted to do it before 14 now, then you might go to eBay, or you might decide you wanted a more validated, warranted experience, so you might go to Music Magpie. What we do is we collect all those sites into one place with one search and give you results from everywhere. So our purpose is to encourage you, a bit like you, Anna, not to buy less, but to buy more savvy. So if you buy pre-loved, refurbished and second-hand, you are, one, saving money, two, you are not creating the desire for more resource plundering because you're buying something that's already in existence. Second-hand is something that can give you great joy, and it's really good for the planet. So we have been going for a few years now. My background is very diverse. I grew up entered life as a fine artist, and I used to make sculptures out of junk and rubbish. I then went on and raced yachts around the world for a living, and it was at that moment, racing around the oceans, that I literally saw floating in the oceans in various corners of the globe rubbish from our overconsumption of stuff. And it wasn't until later on that I had children that I joined the dots and then realised, actually, we just have an awful lot of stuff. Did we need it all? If we do, that's great. Do you need to buy it new? Not always. So that was my purpose in building Rumage. That was the background I started with. And so over the last 4 years, I've generated a business, we've raised investment, and we're growing as a business. So we're looking to collectively provide an easier experience for people to buy what they want and find what they want faster, If you find it more quickly, you're more likely to repeat the experience. And if you repeat it, that is the beginning of a habit. And it's a habit we should all try and adopt as part of our buying and consumption choice. So that's Rumage in a nutshell.
Great. So I think what Joe and I both passionately believe, this is not about preaching. This is not about playing in guilt. This is actually bringing people in onto the story and saying this is what we need to do for the future of our world and for our children. And I'm at the other end of a very brand new business, which has been going over just a year and a half. And myself and my colleagues have helped build it from the ground up. And it is called Reborn Housewares. And it is a business that is built completely 100% from waste that is produced in the UK. So working with partners, and one of the key things I'd say you need to do in business is form great partnerships with people who can help you. So Reborn has been founded working with Brunel University to work out how you can collect waste from the UK and turn it into beautiful products. Because the other critical thing is that customers will not buy second-hand product if it isn't beautiful. If it doesn't look lovely, it isn't beautiful, why would you buy it? You also won't buy it if it's exceptionally premium. I mean, I'm very passionate about Patagonia, who we talked about in the first session, but not many people can afford Patagonia prices. So you need to make sure that although it costs a lot of money to produce product in this way, how do you get the pricing right so that you can get enough volume out there as customers? So the challenges we've had with Reborn is, A, we are absolutely passionate about the fact that this business is made from waste in the UK. So it's in the UK. Brunel University have sponsored in terms of how to chemically turn this into beautiful product. We've worked with Virgin and Innovate UK to get money, because the difficulty of a new business is it costs a lot of money, and it certainly in terms of storytelling costs a lot of money to tell people that you exist. Now, the fortunate thing for Reborn and my colleagues and myself from Retail 100, we know how to do this. So we helped Reborn understand what were the right products to use. Because we were going to be absolutely critical about it being in the UK, we had to make sure those products could efficiently be made in the UK. And one of the key challenges I was telling Joe is that we were doing, it's Sinkside is where we started. We're not food safe yet because of where the products are coming from, but we will be food safe. And when we're food safe, we can be used in many more storage elements. But at the minute, it's all Sinkside. But when we got to the point, because most of it's like this hard-formed plastic, when we got to the point of having to get the stainless steel dish rack, we just couldn't find anyone in the UK who could do it, where it wasn't going to cost us millions of pounds to produce. So we spent a lot of time researching it. And we had a very, very heated board meeting when one of the board members said we should just go to China for it. And we were like, categorically not. If you're going to have your principles and say that you're being made in the UK, you cannot, when it suits you, just decide to go and source in China if that's appropriate. I'm not saying China is bad. It's absolutely not. And there are great factories in China. It's never as clear as that. But if categorically you're saying it comes from the UK, you can't then compromise on that. So we spent a lot of time and eventually ended up in Wales and got some stainless steel from Wales. It did mean that item was a little bit more pricey than we thought, but we took a reduced hit on margin on that item, because the critical thing is that we had to pitch the pricing so that customers would buy it. The other thing we needed to do was tell the story. So we used lots of time on marketing and called it, it was all about we love waste. And the purpose is giving materials new life, but also that this is beautiful product. And then fortunately, the four of us are all ex-John Lewis. So we managed to get this brand into John Lewis, and we gave it to John Lewis exclusively as a beautiful, sustainable brand, understanding that sustainability is very high on their and everybody else's radar, but also made sure all the packaging that comes from the UK is all made from recyclable cardboard, but that also it's very impactful. It's bright yellow, you can't miss it, and it says Reborn, giving new life. So the important thing is the storytelling on the product is not only the product itself, but how you launch it and how you tell the story. But the challenges remain. It's very costly to quote and source in the UK. It's very costly to start a new business and get people excited about it and get funding. So there are constantly challenges when you're building a business in this environmental space. And I firmly believe, it's one of my hobby horses, the government needs to do more to incentivize more of these sustainable, ethical and B Corp businesses. Joe, just some thoughts to you and sort of the challenges of what you do.
Yeah, so monetizing pre-loved is actually extremely hard. And if any of you lurk around LinkedIn or any of the social media channels, you might find that actually lots of small businesses in the last couple of years who we thought were doing really well with circular children's clothing opportunities, renting and things. They've folded because it's actually extraordinarily difficult to make it work. And some of the really big names that you will have heard of, undoubtedly, like Vinted and Vestiaire Collective, are only just beginning to turn a profit, and they still haven't broken even yet, which is incredible when you consider how big they are, how long they've been going, and how many millions of users they have. Part of the issue also is getting your users in, so a go-to-market strategy. We all think that sustainability is rising in profile and people are getting more interested in it, and it's true. But still it is difficult to get out there. And we've actually pivoted Rumage in the last year down to having to rethink our business model to make us financially viable so that we can continue to do what we're doing. So we've now pivoted from focusing on the B2C more towards a B2B opportunity. So now we're working with events companies and festivals this summer to provide them the ability to search through our search engine, and then we monitor their community's actions, and then we translate those actions into carbon savings. So that business can then go out and say, with their hand on their heart, accurately, with accurate data, our community have bought this many refurbished tech items, this many refurbished clothes, and we can then say, you know, this is great, your community's achieved that. But it is difficult. It is difficult to make money. The margins are tiny for us.
Yeah. They are. And the same with Reborn. So the benefit of Reborn is that we're kind of making just as we sell it. So we're not holding warehouses full of stock. But as Joe says, what you need to do with a new business is you need to pivot and you need to grow. So we started off in the sink side category. And I'm very pleased to say that after a year, it's now the second biggest brand for John Lewis in that category. And there's some very big brands in there. So that's a fantastic result. And now we're pivoting into, because you don't stand still when you can get the money. So we're now pivoting into bathroom accessories, which is another thing. I cannot tell you how difficult it is to make a toilet brush that is 100% sustainable, but let me tell you, there's a lot of work in it. But actually, so we're now pivoting into bathroom accessories, which is another very, very big category in the homeware space. And we're looking at cookware as well, and chopping boards now that we're getting to sort of food safe. But to Joe's point, we're also looking to pivot. So we're also working with councils in the UK. So having worked with BIFA and All About Waste, the guy who founded this, who's an amazing guy, Brian Walmsley, who I've worked with at John Lewis for many, many years, hence the connection, has a company called EcoBins that he sells. So we said, why have you not done a bin? Seems a bit obvious. So we're now looking to produce plastic bins, that we will sell for retail, but also that we're talking to councils that they could produce a recycled plastic bin for the councils to put their recycling waste in. So a bit like Joe, thinking about B2B, thinking about different kind of ways of driving the business. One of our items is hangers, plastic hangers, completely made from waste. They're very beautiful and they're made from waste. So we're now talking to hotels and bigger retailers about actually just B2B selling those hangers to get some volume. Because it's always the struggle to get volume at those cost prices because you're not producing lots of volume. So you have to constantly really, really work hard on what your business looks like and what the next opportunity may be for that business. One of the other things we were talking about is in terms of storytelling, it's really important that you are enhancing what your brand is with fabulous storytelling, as we saw in the previous session. Not to be preachy, not to be talking about guilt, but to make it fun and to make it entertaining and to get people excited about the fact that doing good feels good. Doing good is good business, and that's how we've kind of approached it in Reborn. It's quirky and it's funny and it's we love waste, and how that we get people excited about the fact that you shouldn't feel guilty about buying product. And plastic, by the way, is not bad. Single-use plastic is bad. But if you think how many pieces of plastic you have in your house that I have,
Lego.
Tupperware boxes and things that have been there forever, it's not a bad product if it's reused again and again. So it's about reuse and circularity. And the other thing that we will do with Reborn is when you have had your product, if you bring it back, we will recycle it again. So we'll give you a discount off your next purchase and we'll recycle it again, and we'll keep recycling it until so it can be used. It will weaken, so it'll get to some point where you can't really use it for something beautiful, but we will make sure that it's used 5 and 6 times. So there is this whole circular piece with the piece of Reborn that we have sold you. I just want to talk to you, but...
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the returning to an actual product's life cycle is fascinating. It's something that we're really enthusiastic about in Rumage, because it's coming where you can tag, especially in clothing, I think it is now, you can digitally tag an item and you can locate, you can identify its journey, and that we will be getting there really soon, where you'll be able to buy something and you will be able to know how many people it's served before, and that's a really good thing from a brand point of view, because it gives the brand the ability to say with pride, look how well made our items are, look how much life and how much fun and how much joy that jumper, that piece of furniture has given to this number of people. And I think that is a different way of looking at retail than just the instant gratification and then we're done, bin it, move on to the next trendy item. I think the storytelling behind an individual item, a little bit like an heirloom is becoming back into vogue, is really important when you think about circularity as an experience.
Yeah. And I think, Jo, I mean, I'm so impressed. Have a look at Jo's website, it's amazing. But it's the story behind it, the founder, the purpose, the USP, what makes your business different. And all of you who have your businesses, and it doesn't mean that everything has to be 100% recycled, but the ethical part of business is trying to say, how do I trade the best way I possibly can that is responsible for the planet? So if sourcing, we're clearly in a hall of sourcing. So sourcing far away is not a bad thing to do. There's a combination of near sourcing, far sourcing. And if you source, I've sourced in many factories in China, India, which are phenomenal factories, and they have taken extra steps. They either reuse their water in India. I think Supreme Designs were here yesterday, a very ethical company. They're called Bags of Ethics. A perfect example of an amazing ethical company with a founder who owns a factory in India, that he supports women in that factory. They've stayed in that factory for a long time. They have 2 schools in India, so they send children to school at night, conscious that children are working in factories. They educate children at night. They also have a girls' school, conscious that girls don't get the education they need. And they every year raise money for charity. They get UK companies to support it. And they have got people who are now doctors and lawyers and professionals who have come through what's called Wings of Hope. So there are different ethical ways to run your business that is about responsible sourcing. And you don't have to be all one way, but I think the important thing is the storytelling. I've been to phenomenal factories in China where they have got solar power. They do everything they can to support the people who work it. So it's not as clear as UK good, far sourcing bad. Absolutely not. What I would just say is that take that extra step when you are sourcing to make sure that you are sourcing in a responsible way that is right for your business.
Having that sort of purpose behind setting up a business is really important. And if you are a very purposeful, driven business and brand, then it is really key that you stick to it. So as Rumage grew in popularity and we sort of hit that very exciting moment where we had sort of supplier side FOMOs, we had businesses reaching out to us to join Rumage and be served to our customers. Some of them would come on and say, well, it's great. We have, for example, we have bin ends from clothing brands. I said, well, we can't accept those items because they're new. And if we took them onto Rumage, yes, they're out there and they haven't found a home. So in some respects, you could say it's circular. Actually, it was giving license for those businesses to be able to overproduce, which is something that we felt very passionately wasn't the right thing to do for us at all. It went completely against the grain of Rumage. And so getting your passion out there on your marketing is part of it. And for us, it's all about definitely not preaching. We're just trying to show people how easy it is to go and have fun with what you do and how you redo a children's bedroom. It doesn't have to cost a fortune and you can really have some fun with it. And actually, if it's cheaper, you can do it more frequently.
Yeah, that's true. So you can have more newness more of the time.
Yeah.
I think this sort of ethical thing, I think is really, really interesting to me in terms of of how you talk about your business, and it's not black and white. There's not one bad, one good, but I think it's just taking that extra step to make sure. And we were talking, Joe and I, about a lot of B Corp businesses, and I'm not sure how familiar you are with B Corp, but it does seem, I mean, America, it's much higher profile than it is here, but B Corp business are about taking that extra step. So it's just thinking about how you economically, socially, and responsibly source. It's about how you work in the community. I've worked with businesses like Talking Table, so you probably, if you're in the gift world, will know very well. And they're a business who are pivoting because they were all about tableware, which was throwaway but recyclable. And what they're now doing is switching to reuse. So they understand that you do want it. I don't think I ever bought paper plates. I have 3 kids, and ever I always bought plastic plates from the pound shop that we use for every party. And if they were a generic yellow, it didn't matter if it was a girl or a boy. But we just used them all the time if you've got the space. So again, it's just taking that kind of extra thought. And Joe, just thinking, what would you say is the biggest learn from setting up your own business in this kind of way, if you had to advise?
I would say you have to believe in where you started from and why you started the business, because it is still really difficult to get a sustainable business off the ground. I don't really understand why, because I think it's something that should be the mainstream now rather than a sideline. I really think that we are getting to that point where it should become normal to be ethical and sustainable, but we're just not quite there yet for a myriad of reasons.
Yeah.
But I think actually belief, and then seeking, as you mentioned earlier, partnerships. Partnerships, when you are small, are a really good way to grow, and you can learn a lot by partnering with people who have symbiotic, complementary skills, products, teams to yourself, but you can learn a lot of lessons very quickly that you would take a long time to learn on your own.
Yeah. And I think it's going to become, I'm not telling you anything, it's going to become increasingly important. Visibility and transparency of where you source is going to be increasing, literally. I'm working with a company called Fabicus. I don't know you know that every item that you get from IKEA has a QR code on, and you can tell by looking at that QR code what factory that item has come from. You just put it into your phone, and it will tell you where that factory is, what it's called, how the people are treated, what the rules are in that factory. So you will be able to see visibility and transparency of everything that you source. So it's really, really important that you understand the next step in that, because to do the right thing, you need to be transparent. And again, in the session before, we talked about greenwashing and greenhashing, and we're not talking about that. And there have been some very high-profile cases of, unfairly, to be fair, of H&M being pulled out for greenwashing when they actually weren't. But it's very hard to keep a track of where you're sourcing. And at John Lewis, we had so many factories, and we were a big business, making sure, and we could never visit all of those factories, so we had to trust that what was happening in those factories was what we expected. So if you do go to factories, make sure that you don't tell them you're visiting. Come in on spec, make sure you understand that everything is in good shape. All the suppliers here, talk to them about their ethical and sustainability and responsible sourcing. Make sure they're SEDEX approved. So just make sure you're putting that extra step into making sure that a factory that you can't visit frequently is the right kind of factory for you, because transparency is going to be the thing, and the technology is just coming to be able to do that, to check that where you're sourcing is the best place that you can source your product, and it will help you. And actually, a really good top tip is, because I'm always looking at websites, is if you look at H&M and you look at any product in H&M, you click on that product online, it will tell you where that's sourced. So if you look at something and it looks fabulous, you can tell what factory that's come from, because all of that information is visible. If you go into John Lewis's website, if you go into their sustainability part of their website, you can tell where they're sourcing. Clearly, there are amazing sourcing contacts here, and that's what Hive can do to help you understand where are the right places to source for your business and put in that extra step.
I think just taking that further forward, actually, being completely transparent is something that the younger generations are very, very keen on now. One of our target audiences in a couple of categories, a couple of verticals for us, are the Gen Zs, and they really do care more now as a generation where their pound is going and what it's actually going to do and how important the spend is for them. And they're actually, correct me if I'm wrong, but quite fickle in terms of brand loyalty if they think that actually there is a blip in the sustainability or ethical traceability of a business and they see something else coming that's new, they'll move in an instant. So they really genuinely, but if they trust you, they'll stick with you. So I think transparency is really key, and they are growing into their buying power is increasing as they move forward through life.
It's absolutely true, and you'll see that from Gen Z. And I used to give off to my daughter because I'll say on one hand you'll say you're very ethical and very green, and then you're ordering all this stuff from boohoo.com that's been delivered, but, and now she doesn't do that. But and there are choices to be made. But I think, and it depends what life stage you're at. But it's thinking about the quality of what you buy, what it means to you. That doesn't mean, and I think the fact that Joe says you can replace more often if you're doing it with pre-loved stuff. How great is that if you want to? And we always said that when we had customers at John Lewis, the children's bedroom would be IKEA and they wouldn't buy it at John Lewis, and the parents' bedroom would be an investment. So when you have children particularly and you're cost strapped, thinking about being able to replace and refresh more often is and having fun with it. It's not about preaching, it's saying, how can I make this creative? How can I do it better? And sort of one of the most famous quotes of Oscar Wilde is the man who's the price of everything and the value of nothing. So really understanding what it is you're doing really and the impact that has on the world and the environment, and feeling good about trading, feeling really, really positive about what you're doing. It doesn't mean you can't have more stuff. It just might be less stuff or pre-loved stuff or done in a way that helps communities. And one of the other key things I was reading recently is that one of the key things that's going to change poverty in the world, when you ask many people in the governments, is actually free trade and sourcing across the world. You can talk about other things of investing in AIDS in Africa, which comes up as number one, but in the top three is cutting trade barriers and investing in free trade, because that pulls so many more people out of poverty, which I think, given we are in source and given the show that we're in, is one of the most important things to think about when you're sourcing your product.
Yeah, no, I'd agree.
Any questions from anyone? We're happy to take questions offhand if anybody wants any. But,
yeah, come and find us afterwards.
We have one.
Okay, thank you. So what's the spelling of Fabacus, please?
Pardon?
The spelling of Fabacus?
Fabacus, I will check. It's founded by a guy called Andrew Zaney. Andrew Zaney founded a beautiful fashion brand, which I now can't remember. It's an ethical floral fashion brand, and he has founded Fabacus because he is helping, and actually one of his newest customers is Marks and Spencer's, who obviously with Plan A were very, very hot on this. So he is he's driving this openness and transparency around. But yeah, absolutely. So if you look at Fabacus, I think it's Fabacus, but I'll check afterwards. But absolutely worth looking at, because everybody is going to be using these QR codes in the future. Cool. I think we're done, are we? Great. Thank you very much. Really appreciate your attention.
Thank you.
And we're happy to take questions if anybody wants any.
Thanks.